Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. I'm Sergio Pacholari, professor at Exalc USP here in Brazil. So, welcome to this A5 Alliance webinar series on biological inputs in agriculture. This event is part of the annual Luiz de Queiroz Week organized by the Luiz de Queiroz College of Agriculture, Exalc, of the University of São Paulo, in honor of the founder of our college. The webinars bring together faculty members of the A5 Agri-Food Alliance, comprised that include 5 universities globally recognized for their scientific knowledge, research expertise, teaching and training. China Agricultural University, Cornell University, University of California, Davis, Wagner University, and University of São Paulo, Exalc. The A5 Agri-Food Alliance is dedicated to the sustainable transformation of agriculture and food systems through its commitment to developing advanced knowledge, education, and training for future leaders in agri-food systems. So, we are going to have our speakers, and I welcome them. And we have Professor Van Lentering from Heinz, and Professor Lentering, good afternoon. If you would like to say who you are, what you do, please.
Okay, bom dia, Sergio and Italo. Good. I have my 3 minutes introduction now, Sergio.
Yeah, just 3 minutes about you.
Yes, okay. Good morning, Anne. You are not there yet. Ni hao, Wan Peng. Goedemiddag, Monique. And bom dia to my wife, Vanda Helena Paes Bueno, who is alone in Piracicaba because I had to leave Piracicaba in March this year. Okay, I work at Wageningen University, which is a young university, only 101 years old. But we are proud to be on the one of the top life sciences universities for many years now. Sometimes Cornell is beating us. I started with biocontrol 50 years ago in the area where my father had a greenhouse and where frequent chemical sprays were common. Still, it's difficult sometimes to introduce biocontrol because of wrong ideas. My working philosophy is that biocontrol should be as reliable and as cheap as chemical control, but the chemical industry is very often lobbying against biocontrol at all levels, at farmers level and at governmental levels with politicians. So students, if you want to really work in biocontrol, it will not be an easy life, but it's a very interesting life. And you have to leave the ivory tower of the university and work with farmers. I'm now at the end of my scientific career, and I'm happy that this year, together with colleagues from Latin America, we were able to write a book about biocontrol in Latin America. If you like a PDF of some of the chapters of this book, please contact me and I will send you some. Thank you very much, Sergio.
I'd like to welcome Wang Peng from China, Ag University, to say hello to everybody.
So, nice to meet best videos, our colleagues. Yeah, I'm working in the China Agricultural University, plant the College of Plant Protections protection. Yeah, my main work here about the biological control of pest insects, but I focused on the biological control of locust and the grasshoppers with the paranosum locust. Yeah, yeah. So 2009, yeah, also I had visited the Penn State University, yeah, working in the lab of the Thomas, yeah. Also, 2003, I worked visited the international center of insects biology control and the chemical ecology. Yeah. So welcome to colleagues. Yeah, visited our university or laboratory. Also welcome the students. Yeah, apply the scholarship of Chinese government, even the Beijing government, like that. Welcome. Thank you. Sirigo, you're muted.
Okay, thank you, Wang Peng. I would like to welcome Professor Anne Heinz to say in 3 minutes what she does in this
Okay.
overview. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you very much, and hello to everyone. And I thank everyone for inviting me to participate. So my training, I studied at University of California, Berkeley in the Division of Biocontrol. That's where I got my PhD. And after that, I moved to Cornell, and I really focused, have for the majority of my career, on pathogens, insect pathogens, which I find very fascinating, and it's really a growing area of concern. It's quite different than parasitoids and predators. But I've taught courses. I'm at Cornell University now. I'm a professor. And I've taught courses about general biological control, and kind of in keeping with that, I wrote a textbook. Some of you might know this textbook. The first version of it looks like this. And there's a new version out that it's on my shelf. Like I said, I've mostly now worked on pathogens, doing basic work and applied work with diverse hosts, but most of them are invasive species. We've had such huge problems with invasive species in North America. And I think it's very interesting to study the biology. Many of these pathogens, we don't understand the general biology, which is important, very important for understanding how to use them for biocontrol. And so along those lines, I've also been very interested in studying kind of the episodiology of pathogens. And we had this book come out just a couple of years ago. That's an edited book. And so if you also are interested in chapters from this book, I can't send you the whole Natural Enemies book, but I could provide chapters from the Ecology of Invertebrate Diseases book. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, and I would like to invite Professor Monique Ors to say hello, please.
Hello, everybody. Well, my name is Monique van Oers, and I was born as a Dutch girl, and I'm still living in the Netherlands. I'm a colleague of Joop van Lenteren, but I'm active in the Laboratory of Virology, which I'm actually chairing since, 2013. We have been working in our lab, and myself as well, on insect pathogenic viruses, and these come in all kinds of varieties. But for biocontrol, the baculoviruses and the entomopox viruses are best well known, I guess. We are focusing on baculoviruses. Maybe good to say that we are both active in biocontrol and have been active in several projects. We're now trying to find a solution for the invasive Spodoptera frugiperda caterpillars in a collaborative project also with Africa. But we also embarked on a completely new line which has nothing to do with biocontrol. In fact, in this case, you want to keep insects, and that is the Insect Doctors AU program, where we try to find new virus species and new other pathogens in insects mass-reared. But these things, of course, interact, because there we will also work with companies that are rearing insects to produce biocontrol agents. So this is all interconnected. Apart from that, we also work at biotechnological applications of these viruses. So a broad scale of issues there. Thank you.
Thank you, Monique. I would like to invite Professor Italo.
Participate in this webinar, and I see to see some colleagues here, Anne Hayek, Professor Van Lenter, and Monique, and Shi Wangpeng. It's good to be part of this select group of professors, in this A5 Alliance. So I'm actually a double A5 because I'm a Cornell alumni. And Hayek was my advisor during my PhD, so it's a great pleasure to be participating in a webinar with Anne. So Cornell was an important time of my life. I'm also the director of a research and development unit called EMBRAPI. Now, EMBRAPI stands for the Brazilian Company of Research and Industrial Innovation. We are currently developing around 20 projects with private companies, mostly developing products for the biocontrol industry. I'm also the principal investigator of the Spark Bio. The Spark Bio is we call São Paulo Advanced Research Center in Biological Control. It's a partnership between the USP and our state foundation, FAPESP, and also Coopert, the largest biocontrol company in the world. So I would like to take this opportunity to say a few words for my colleagues from other countries and also from the audience about the status of the biocontrol and the history of biocontrol in Brazil. So we can learn a lot from the past. So in Brazil, the use of entomopathogens started in the 70s with the baculovirus program against the soybean caterpillar and also the metarhizium program against spirobugs. So those are probably one of the largest programs in the world now. But it was only in 2002 that we had the first entomopathogenic fungi registered as a biocontrol in Brazil. So biocontrol in Brazil, it's very recent if you compare to Europe, for example. In Europe, as far as I know, we had a product in 1938, so a BT product in France. And however, so the use of biocontrol in Brazil is increased very drastically in the last 5 years at least. So Brazil was the leaders country the use of biocontrol in the world. So we are spraying biocontrol microorganisms in more than 10 million hectares every year. The Brazilian farmers, they have available in the market now around 28 BT products, 21 baculovirus products, and about 100 products based on fungal pathogens. However, although we have the 22 species of registered microorganisms in Brazil, there are many pests that there's no non-chemical options to control, to use in Brazil. So the development of the microbial control in Brazil depend largely in the academia, but my impression that we're expecting in the near future, there will be increasing participation of startups and private sector, the companies in this development. And I would like to list 3 major areas that I think we should focus now as a scientist and prioritize the studies in the coming years. First is bioprospection of new microorganisms. Now, developing products using new microbes that are not studied or investigated right now. You know that the development of biocontrol in Brazil, it's market-driven, and this has several implications. So some biological control agents that have potential, such as, for example, the entomopteralian fungi, an area that Anne Hayek worked and I worked in the past, and also Microsporidia, for example. We don't have any scientists working in this area in Brazil, so we need more investments in some other groups that we're currently not using. The second is conservation biocontrol. We should not only investigate the inundative biocontrol strategy, but also that we call the biopesticide approach, but also look for more strategy, explore those strategies to enhance natural enemies that are already present in the agroecosystem. And the third area is the use of microorganisms and their metabolites of plant to induce plant defense system. So my opinion, I have been working with this for the last 7 years, and this is going to be the next generation of biological control. Now, if you actually can call this biocontrol. What the studies have been shown recently is that the microbes that we use to control pests, they do more things than just kill the pest and disease. So they can actually produce plant hormone. They can solubilize phosphate and other nutrients in the soil. They increase absorption of nutrients in general. They can also colonize plant endophytically and induce plant defense. So working similar to a vaccine, for example. And I believe that we need to measure, to quantify those effects, the secondary effects, for example, and say that because recently we only compare the effectiveness of a single application, usually comparing with chemicals, but we should take the advantage of those secondary effects. My opinion, this will change the paradigm of the pest control. So I'll finish here and I'll give the words to Professor Sergio, and we can start the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Italo. Well, I'm Sergio Pacholari. I got my PhD at Purdue University. I'm a full professor here at ESALC, and I work on plant disease physiology and biochemistry of plant diseases. And also I work on biological control of pathogens, virus, bacteria, fungi, and so on. When you talk about biological control in Brazil, always what comes in our minds would be the control of insects. So the biological control of pathogens in Brazil is like a baby now. We are just starting to grow up. Well, the idea is to make some questions, some direct questions anybody can answer, can give some input in those questions. And the first one, I would ask Professor Van Lendering, that there is a concept that biological products do not have the same consistency in results as chemical pesticides. Is this true? Is it related to a lack of quality control of products?
I think it is a wrong perception, and it's related partly to what I said earlier. The chemical industry is very often telling that biocontrol is not effective. Is the microphone on?
Yeah.
Okay. That's why I told during my introduction that my philosophy is that it should be as effective, as cheap as chemical control. And the fact that many growers in Europe are using it simply shows that it is effective, and it is also very economic. So I think it's a wrong perspective, but we as biocontrol workers have to be more clear, more direct, and maybe a little bit more aggressive to make sure that people understand that biocontrol is reliable, economic, and effective.
Can feel is that the private companies, they are coming to university trying to develop new biological control agents. And in this case, I would ask everybody, do you believe that within 10 years, biological control will be the role and the chemical control the exception? So this is open for everybody. So the biological control would be the...
So I can start. I mean, so my perception is that we have an increase in the market sale, the market share for biocontrol, and this would continue in the next years. Now we're talking about a growth rate of 20% at least here in Brazil. In most parts of the world, this is not different. But it's still, biocontrol is maybe around 5% of the have the market share. My impression is that we're going to have a more biocontrol now, but also the chemical also increase productivity, at least here in our country. It will be very difficult that the biocontrol be a rule. I mean, I think other approaches that we are not using right now, including, for example, plant defense and other strategy would also increase. I mean, there's a pressure for reducing pesticides. So my feeling is that biocontrol is increasing a lot, but we're still going to rely on chemicals for many pests, because there are many pests, there are many diseases that we don't have options for biocontrol, and it takes a very long time to develop this.
Okay, please.
Can I
Yes.
react to this? Because I think I disagree a lot, and it might partly be based on the European philosophy of plant protection. I agree that plant defense, host plant resistance will increase, but it will help biological control a lot. And the philosophy of the European Union is to go for IPM. They are funding research projects, but also countries now have to send in their IPM programs to the European Union, to the European Commission, and there is a strong drive to get rid of chemical control. It will not disappear, but it will for sure biocontrol and host plant resistance will both increase during the coming 10 years, and they will no longer be marginal. They will be much more important than currently.
Okay, please, Anne.
Yeah. So I think in United States, in agriculture, chemicals are still used, and in part from what Joop says, that there aren't options that are biological control in many instances. But I think that all the indications are there are more products and they're getting more acceptance. People are really working towards being able to offer these more options which weren't available in the past. And the people who've been working on the economics of this, especially looking at biopesticide products, have been showing figures like this, showing that there's going to be an increase in the global availability of products. And I think that increasing the diversity, increasing availability, hopefully along with that will go in proving to people that the efficacy is there also, because there's always this worry that they're not efficacious.
Okay. But Monique, please.
Yeah, I would like to actually ask you a question, if that's possible. Good ideas is one thing, but educating people to understand these ideas is another issue. So how are we going to approach that, and how far is that in your countries?
Regarding the biological control?
Yeah,
You're asking me.
I'm asking everybody. At least the ones in Brazil and in USA, in China and USA.
So you can answer your five.
Yeah.
Your five. Young.
Oh, thank you. Okay, thank you, Mika. Yeah, in China now the chemical use the pesticide also is the main method for control the main pest insects. But the Chinese government has paid a great attention to the biological controls. The governments have the different measures, yeah, to put toward the biological controls. For example, the research, yeah, the government have established lots of projects for developing the new biocontrol agents such as microbial agent and natural enemies, natural products, and so on. So also in the policy, the registration of biological agent are special pass away. Like in the extension, the government also give some subsidies for the user of biological agents. Yeah, I think that's all like that. Yeah. Okay, thank
Please.
you.
And
So in response to Monique's question, I would say that the fact that there in the United States there are fewer pesticides that are allowed for use is going to drive, and that's increasing over time, fewer and fewer new being developed. And then there's a great increasing public interest in buying organic or having fewer pesticides used, chemical pesticides used. And so I think that that along with trying to provide the information more to what we call extension agents that teach the growers, that have access to growers and teach the growers these new methods. So I think that this is an evolving change.
Yeah.
And it's hard to say what will happen. I think that in Europe, you're further along towards having more acceptance of using less pesticides.
I hope so.
Okay, Italy.
Yeah, I think Monique's question it's very important because this is one of the reasons that biocontrol is not used on a much larger scale. The fact that the farmers they don't know how they could find the product in the market, how they can use the product, for example. And they have to convince them to use in some ways. In Brazil, extension is not doing this job right now, and I think the most of the change is basically based on the companies that are selling, that are actually doing this job. Training, for example, we're doing this at the university level also because we have this Spark Bio, the research center. That one part of our activities is to do this. To have courses and train the farmers and mostly the sellers, for example. I mean, because biocontrol because it's a living organism and needs to be applied differently. You have to change the chemical paradigm, when you sell a biocontrol. And it's going to be a long term, to train, the farmers and people how to use biocontrol. And I think it's not going to be something that we're going to do this in a short time.
Okay. Well, I think that's in this subject, another than one kid of 89 years came to me and said, Uncle Sergio, I'm answering this exam. And there is one question here. The pesticides are not good because of one answer would be they pollute the environment. So it means for me that the pressure of the society, because this kid in 10 years will be 20 years old, the pressure of the society will make this change. I think that will be earlier than we think about. Well, I would have a question for Monique here. The use of baculovirus products only target caterpillars. Do we expect to have biopesticides for other pests in the near future?
Sorry, I cannot hear you very well, Sergio. There's an echo.
Okay. But I think that some microphone is open here. The use of baculovirus products only target caterpillars. Do you expect to have virus biopesticides for other pests in the near future?
Well, I can be rather short on that. The largest majority of products are indeed for caterpillars. There's also baculoviruses for what is called sawflies. And they are not present in all orders of insects. So we are limited there. They're in caterpillars, they are in these sawflies. Mosquitoes only one so far, so that's not really promising. And that's about it.
Okay.
But there are other viruses like nudie-viruses. They are related, and these are, for instance, used for the Oryctys rhinoceros beetle virus. And there we are just beginning to discover all these viruses over there. So I think there is promising candidates there.
Okay. Well, this is nice because you see, you have virus as a biopesticides for pests, insects, and we are carrying out research by using virus to induce resistance in plants against pathogens, as a biopesticide. So here we have the insect, and then we have the pathogen side. Well, I think that Italo already talked about this, but this would be for N, the development of microbial pesticides is market-driven. Do you think that this is responsible for the delays in the implementation of several microbial control agents that have excellent potential, such as Microsporidia and Entomophytorales?
At least in part, that's definitely driven by the market and whether there's enough people that are willing to buy and use these products. And once again, we were just talking about how it's so important to gain the confidence of growers and knowledge of growers about them, so that then there's more demand, and then these often kind of smallish producers will take the risk to increase their productivity and increase the number of products that they're selling. So I think that it being market driven is very important. But if we're talking about things like Microsporidia and Entomophytorales, there are some other problems there. Entomophytorales are not easy to grow as Ovaria bassiana. We don't have a good mass production technology, or at least it's not being mass produced anywhere. And Microsporidia, those, as far as I know, are only produced in insects. And so then you have this issue of having to produce the insects. It just makes them, in both cases, potentially more expensive. And so, then I think that that will definitely drive the price of the product and whether the growers will, the producers will buy it.
Okay. And well, this would be a general question, and I would ask Professor Wang Peng, starting if possible. Um, how safe is biological control agents of pests and plant disease, and what are the risks imposed by microbial secondary metabolites in biopesticides and in plant endophytes used as inoculants? So, how safe is biological control?
Yeah.
Because you see, always we say that it's ecologically correct, it's safe, And another day I was looking at some papers that came out from some German researchers, and they are talking about the risks of the biological control. Well, if anybody wants to
Yeah.
answer that.
Yeah, it's a big questions. Yeah. Uh, so we scientists, yes, firstly push forward the research and application of biological agents, but the effects of biological products is more important. Most of such as most of microsporidia, is not good effects on the pests. But a few people research it also and find the good the species or some strains like that. Yeah, we need to going to find the good the species. So like, so we produce malacosta, yeah. But it's difficult, yeah. Yeah, some also the biological agents also is cross field. For example, the protect environment soil, so also the can protect the and find the protect the entomopathogen. I think I better hear the answers
Well,
of other
well,
yes scientists. Okay.
uh-huh. Well, I don't know if somebody would put on top. Oh, Monique, please.
Yeah, I would like to add that in my view, we cannot give a general answer to this because we are looking at so very different pathogens of insects and or let's say for enemies of insects, and it really for some are really host specific, while others have a very broad host range. And you really need to look into the particular agent that you want to apply to be able to say how risky that is. Of course, we know for most chemicals that they have a very broad effect on many different species. And in that respect, you could say that biological agents are probably less general in affecting many species, but they will not per se say they are all safe. So I think we need to know very well the enemy we want to apply before we can actually leave it out into nature, let it out into nature.
Okay. Italo, do you want to talk? I think then Professor Van Link.
Yeah, just to add what Monique was saying, when you talk about natural enemies, then we have a broad, categories of natural enemies. For example, we are using baculovirus, but there's many viruses that are in groups that we have human pathogens or pathogens of animals. So there's some fungi that can also cause some problems, but they're not currently used. No, the ones that are used or commercialized currently, they have been proved to be safe. In terms, at least in terms of application. Of course, there's some that could have some allergies, some problems, and mostly for the people that are producing or maybe the operator, but not for the consumers. But of course, we have to look in a case by case. In terms of using some organisms as endophytes in the plant, there's also this concern because, for example, metabolism produced destruxin is a toxin. It can be bad for humans. Okay, but it produces such a small amount in the plant that it probably the mechanism is not the production of toxin in the plant, is inducing the plant defense. So my feeling is that you should look in a different perspective now, the effect of the biocontrols. But of course, always looking at the risk. But even in Europe and here in Brazil, the biocontrol products have been treated as a low-risk products, and they should be, evaluated differently from chemicals. No? Okay, let's see what Valente wants to say.
Yeah, please.
They are not considered all low risk. We hope that the ones that are accepted, registered, and tested will be considered low risk. But we have developed with the International Organization for Biological Control a risk analysis for predators and parasitoids. And it's a stepwise process. And you see, if you study all the natural enemies of one pest, you may find 200 different species, and 80 or 85, 180 might be risky because they are too general. So very quickly in the evaluation process, we throw out the ones with the widest menu. So then we are left with 10, 20 potential candidates. And I think this is one part of the biggest problem in biocontrol, to come from all the natural enemies quickly to a limited number of promising microbials, predators, and parasitoids. We are facing this, and many people go to an easy natural enemy or to an easy microbial instead of first trying to evaluate what's available, what is not safe, and what is safe. And I know, for example, that at this moment, Embrapa has a project to improve the risk assessment of predators and parasitoids. I don't know how it is with microbials, but I also know that in Brazil you are discussing quality control, and I think part of quality control is also efficacy and safety. So I think it will improve quickly, this risk assessment business.
Okay. Italo, uh, what do you think about using a mixture of microorganisms in a commercial product to control pests, plant pathogens, and also promote plant growth? Because what we can see, at least here in Brazil, a lot of private companies, they come to the university uh, in order to try to make a product with different microorganisms inside that would work against insects, plant pathogens, solubilize phosphate, induce plant growth, and things like that.
Yeah, that's we have seen. You have seen a change recently with more products being registered with a combination of microbes. It can be a combination of, for example, two pathogens, for example, to expand the host range, so they can control, for example, with baculovirus now, because you have, for example, soybean. At least 3 or 4 important caterpillars that are important pests. So the farmer has to buy one product for each caterpillar. So now you start having more products combining different virus. In this sense, I see opportunity, the market opportunity for the companies. We're also looking for synergies when you put 2 different pathogens, and not only increase the host range, but increase the efficacy against certain pests, at least for some groups that are difficult, more fastidious or more difficult to control. But this idea also, because the cost of spraying, it's really high. So it means that if you can put more than one product together in one application, that's what the farmers are doing with chemicals. So with the biocontrol, they have to buy 2 different things and mix. And this approach of mixing these inside of the product, I think it's interesting, but there's a lot of challenges, For example, putting a bacteria with a fungi, and there's probably the shelf life. There's a lot of issues that needs to be solved. But I see a great opportunity to mix things, especially in this case now to improve plant health and also to increase the control. And I think this is going to be the tendency of the market. I think it could be in a good for some combination, maybe not for other combinations. You have to look this case by case.
Okay, thank you. Well, Monique, you want to talk? No.
I was just wondering whether there is also questions from the audience.
No, well, this is one thing, if anybody that's watching us, if they have questions, please write down, and then the speakers will be very happy to answer them. As we wait for the questions, this is a general question, because you see here in Piracicaba, we have what we call the AgTech Valley. More than 40% of the startups related to the agro, they are here in Piracicaba. And I would like to know, what is the scenario in your country for startups looking for innovation in the area of biological control of pests and plant pathogens? Because here in Brazil, we can see that we have a very nice time right now for this. Usually these startups, they are spin-offs from the university, the students, PhDs, they open these startups to work on different areas regarding the agriculture. I don't know how is in your country right now this startup movement for innovation. And
So I spoke with preparing for this meeting, I spoke with some leaders of people that work with fungi, entomopathogenic fungi, and entomopathogenic nematodes. And they both of these kind of experts said that they think that in the United States, there's major big companies, large companies that are in control of most of the market. And certainly there are many distributors, and those would be smaller startups, though that would allow smaller startups. But these the bigger companies, just a few bigger companies for either the fungi or the nematodes are who is in control. So it's not, I think it's a different situation in the United States compared with what Italo was talking about, so many smaller companies. That's not what we're seeing in the United States with fungi and nematodes.
Well, one thing that you can realize, at least here in Brazil, these big companies, they are trying to put together what they call a hub. They call small startups for them, let's say, and they would work with them in some specific problems, trying to help the farmer to solve problems. I don't know if someone would like to talk about it or about that.
I just want to add that we had a platform organized by the Danish embassy here in Brazil for the startups from Denmark to explore the Brazilian market. Recently, I was part of this effort. I met several Danish startups, and it was very interesting that some of was just a startup started based on a thesis, and they find something that was really innovative and disrupting, and now they're trying to explore the market. So consider that the agriculture market is so huge. So there are many those startups, and I see. I mean, this is my impression that what we have seen here in Brazil, we're seeing in other countries also, that there's a lot of opportunities for ideas from the students that to become really a product, for example.
Okay. Well, we don't have any question yet, but if you wanna question each other, please feel free. Van Landen.
I have one remark about startups. In Holland, we have two types of startups. Roughly speaking, students from the university, I mean for predators and parasitoids. Microbials is a totally different world because it's rather hard to start as a small company with microbials due to costs of registration. But for parasitoids and predators, we have students starting or growers starting. The students usually fail because they're not practical. They have brilliant ideas, but they don't have green fingers. The startups, as growers, well, they are quite successful. For example, corporate company, it was a cucumber grower, and when they started, I started more or less with biocontrol, and I remember the first discussions we had with corporate. I had all these ideas, and they said, doesn't work, it's not practical. So I realized if you want to implement biological control, if you really want to develop biocontrol, you have to work with farmers, and not only with organic, you have to work with the best, the most progressive farmers. And what we saw in Holland was that several other companies developed. In Belgium, it is Biobest, also large, and they always had a very intense collaboration with. There was always an intense collaboration between farmers and university. The problem at university, I find in many countries, is that scientists have brilliant ideas, but they are not sufficiently realistic, and they don't see the problems of the farmer. I mean, it's nice to have a good virus or a good parasitoid, but if it doesn't fit in the system, and I remember my father telling me when I had whitefly biological control with Encarsia, my father said, do you think I'm going to to put another insect in my greenhouse. I'm not crazy. But after 5 years, he agreed. So extension, 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 and work with progressive farmers.
Italo, do you want to talk? No? Well, I have a question here for Monique. Studies on baculovirus applications in the medical and pharmaceutical fields have evolved a lot in the last decades. How can these studies help in the evolution of microbial pest control for agriculture? Did you understand?
Not completely.
Well, studies by using baculovirus in the medical and pharmaceutical fields
Yeah,
evolved a lot. Now, is it possible to use that for microbial pest control?
Yeah, I think that I understand where you're hiding at, pointing at. And well, there have been several attempts to at least produce biocontrol baculoviruses for biocontrol in large bioreactors. And that is coming over, of course, from the biotechnological applications of this virus. But so far, what we see is that the baculoviruses that are produced in insects are more efficacious than those produced in bioreactors. And we do not know exactly how that works, but it may have to do with some cleavage steps that normally occur in the insects of special surface proteins that make them more active. And these are things that could be worked on, but what complicates matters is that we are not allowed to use any modified viruses as biocontrol agents at the moment. So as soon as we start to use some GMOs there to improve things, then we are in trouble.
Okay. And we have a question here from the audience. It's a general question. Why is biological control not applied on a much larger scale? Why is biological control not applied on a much larger scale? Well, during this talk, a lot of the comments would already answer that question, but I don't know if someone would like to answer. Please, Van Leen.
Yeah, I cannot stop answering this question. I think people are ignorant. They don't know. The world is green because of biological control. The Amazon is green, Pantanal is green, the European forests are green because of biological control. In nature, most animals eating plants are reduced by natural enemies, by microorganisms. In agriculture, I think there's 5 to 10% of the total area of agriculture is under permanent biological control, classical biological control. Most people only know about inundative, augmentative biocontrol. That's still a small market, but it will grow. Sorry to be so emotional about this, but I think people just don't know.
I think that, yeah.
I think it's a very good point, Joop, and it seems that actually all our problems with, most our problems with pest insects start to occur when we as humans change the environment and start to use it for our own business. Yeah. And then, yeah, we disturb a lot.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when you think about biocontrol, you have the conservation biocontrol that is actually not explored much here in Brazil, probably more in Europe. Classical biocontrol, the area that I work in and Hayek work, I mean, it's actually almost insignificant in the use of pathogens also. But the use of the inundative approach, one thing that you also have to discuss is the economic part. at least here, I mean, Ian mentioned that in the US we have large companies working. In Brazil, you have bigger companies buying the small one, but usually the market is mostly for small companies. I'm thinking Van Lenteren mentioned that for parasitoids, a predator usually companies usually are small, and what you see here that the farmer, when they buy the seed, then they have usually to buy some pesticide, some chemical pesticide, and they pay at the end of the harvest. So this means that the company has to have to finance, the farmers to buy the pesticides, and so with the biocontrol, it's not easy because the companies cannot afford, they have to sell and get the money, as fast as possible. That's something you need to think also, because there's an economic issue involved, and this is not easy. And there's many other things, about the farmer's culture, and how we're going to change the chemical paradigm. They spray chemical, think that it is working, and maybe it's not, but they complain about the biocontrol, but they're not complaining about the chemical. So there are many issues in terms of why you're not using much biocontrol.
Okay. Well, I don't know if Professor Wang Peng would like to comment about this topic, why biological control is not applied on a much larger scale.
Yeah, the people just pay most of the people just pay the emergency effects of the pesticides. Not just the chemicals, the pesticide can have the effect, but you can get the emergency effects. The biological controls, the have effects of for slowness. So another way, also the chemicals pesticide is the low cost. It's low cost. It's easy to use it, apply it. But biological control, need special technology. It's so. I'm seeing from the another way. Not because the environment destroyed by chemicals, pesticides. So, we have to recover the environment of let the natural enemies, biological agents, the suitable, got the good
Okay.
working.
Well, we have here one question from Marina Piccolini. Do you have experiences or experiments with endophytes? Could you comment the results? Well, this is a nice question because another day I was reading a scientist from Utrecht in Netherlands. He was able to isolate the endophyte bacteria from a plant, changed that bacteria, put that bacteria back in the plant, and the phenotype of the plant changed as if he would have done some breeding with that plant. I don't know if you understood that, but instead of doing the classical breeding for plants, you would be able to get a bacteria, change that genetically, put it back as an endophyte, and the plant will respond in the way that the person would like to. But, well, this is a dream. Let's see if somebody can talk about endophytes, the biological control. Monique, do you wanna? No, Italo.
Yeah. So I have been working, at least for the last 7 years, working on entomopathogenic fungi as endophytes. Inoculating fungi, for example, during the planting, or even spraying and measuring how much the fungi can colonize the plant through the stomata, for example, or the roots. And there's some pathogen, they do this, very easy, and they have a stable association with the plant. You can find the pathogen for a long time. And even the effects, the change, for example, we measure the plant defense by different gene pathways, for example. And Bovaria baciana is a fungus that is most used very widely here in Brazil. They can actually induce the three systems, of the plant defense. And even plants after 60, 90 days after inoculate the fungus, they're still responding to an invasion, for example, of another fungal disease, or even for a herbivore, for example, inducing. And this, we have seen this with many different microbes, not with those you call entomopathogenic fungi. But when you test, for example, Purpuricillium or Poconia that is used to control nematodes, or even some bacillus that are used for different approach, they can also do the same. And I think I mentioned this at the end of my talk, that I think is going to be the next generation of the use of those entomopathogen is not only to measure how much it killed the pest, but also the other secondary benefits that they're bringing and changing the plant metabolites, or for example.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. Well, I think that we are here all 1 hour already talking. Maybe I don't know if somebody would like to ask a question to the other speaker, or then we can give you some minutes for each one to close this section. What do you think, Italo?
I have one question. I was thinking now.
Oh, your microphone is
okay. Is it on?
Yeah.
So I have one question, because one thing that we have been discussing is how you can increase the availability of other natural enemies. Professor Van Lenter mentioned, the problems of starting with a large group and, end up with a few species that have potential. In terms of biocontrol, pathogens, for example, that's my area. What I have seen is that the fact that some groups of pathogens has not been explored much, the number of scientists working, it's reducing. Now, say Anne Hayek, for example, work with Entomophthalmian. How many people are working with Entomophthalmian right now? For biocontrol, they are the true entomopathogenic fungi. So they could provide a lot of service, for our system. But the problem is with this system that you have, even in academia, the scientists, if they publish something, I work with neozygites, a fungus that I don't know how many people, probably there are not many people who work with this fungus anymore. If you publish something, nobody will cite your publication. So the impact factor of your CV will be, low, because, there's not much publication on that. And that's something that's not attracting our students to some areas. And it's not only the problem that is market-driven, the development and innovation, but also we're supposed in academia to be the ones investing in new areas and trying to bring to the market new ideas and new. But it's not easy, because we are or publish or perish. And what is your opinion? Can it's still possible to change this scenario?
Anne, please.
Yes, well, I would agree that it becomes driven in part by with doing research, is being able to find funding in order to do the research. And if you can't get funding channels to be excited about the research and potential for that research, you can't get funding. And this is even true with USDA, our U.S. Department of Agriculture researchers. They also have to convince people in order to get funding to do research. And so it becomes like a cycle of very difficult to start a new project, to come up with a new pathogen, unless it's got something new and very sexy about it. It's hard to do something very creative and go in a new direction, just like Joop was talking about with students' projects, that they might be just brilliant, but if you don't have that preliminary data, and really good preliminary data, it's very hard to move forward. That's a really hard, it's a difficult situation.
Van Lentering, please.
Yeah, we had a very strange experience 20 years ago, related to publish or Paris. Paris. We had a reorganization of Wageningen University, and they wanted to know there are some researchers said we only work for free, so we don't publish maybe enough. And there was a very strange result. There was a strong correlation to those people who published the best papers and had most practical research results. So it's not so that if you work with farmers that you necessarily publish less and less good. That's one aspect. The other thing I wanted to say in reaction to Italo, I think there is not enough collaboration. People are speaking about collaboration, but they keep their nicest things secret. Let's take an example. Latin America is faced with tuta absoluta problems. All of Europe has tuta absoluta. Tuta absoluta is now in Africa. I was just reading this afternoon one pang that tuta absoluta is now in China and they cannot eradicate it anymore. There are 200 people working on natural enemies of tuta absoluta. They do not sit together and speak out the best solutions. There are several review papers. They list 200 natural enemies, including microbials. No one is taking the initiative. A few people are taking the initiative to sit together and say, this is not efficient. Stop with it. I can point at people both in Latin America and in Europe working on interesting but not practical, not economic natural enemies. So let's collaborate more and be open about effectivity of new natural enemies instead of working our hobbies. Listen to the farmer, listen to their needs, and collaborate.
Okay, thank you. Well, we have the one thing. Do you want to talk?
Excuse?
Well, his microphone is closed. Somebody microphone dele.
Okay,
Okay.
it's on now.
One thing you can
Yeah.
talk.
Yeah, I agree. The job, yeah. We have to go into the put the cooperate with together. I think introduce the enemies and the beneficiaries organize them like that.
Well,
Okay. Yeah.
okay. We have just one last question, and then maybe we can close this section so everybody will have 1 minute to say something, and then we can close this webinar. Well, the question is, what is the potential of using flowers? Oh, it's there in the screen. What's the potential of using flowers, conservative biological control for pest management in large crops? J. Iago Castro. So, Anne, do you want to talk, please?
Well, I just know of one really excellent example that, and it doesn't have to do with pathogens, but it's in lettuce in California. And they have spent a lot of time with planting flowers in between the rows of lettuce. and have been very good at increasing the syrphid population, the flower flies population, have predatory larvae down inside of the lettuce, and have been getting, according to the literature, really excellent control. And I think for numerous years I've been improving this. This is a really great example, and I think that this group has really focused specifically on this and have improved it over different seasons and have made it so that it works quite well. Perhaps maybe you know more about this. This is more, yeah.
Landon, please.
I will send you some papers or contact me after the meeting. There are quite some papers. And I remember when I finished my PhD, I went to the University of California in Riverside, and I saw the first experiment of strip cropping. They had alfalfa and cotton in strips, side by side. And when they harvested the alfalfa, they moved the crop with a kind of vibrator, and the natural enemies, of course, also the pests, moved the cotton. But most important was the natural enemies. When they moved the cotton, they were shaking the cotton, and the ladybirds went to the aphid. Well, recently in the Netherlands, we started with strip cropping again. The big problem to use flowers, I mean, thinking about sugarcane in Brazil or soya, thousands of hectares, to use flowers there is not simple. Even in the Netherlands, they realized we cannot have a potato field with a few flowers at the side. So now they make strips. They have a strip of potato and a strip with another crop, and they make the width of the strip as large as the harvesting machine. So you can use the same harvester, but you have 2 or 3 different crops. And the first results are just incredible to see how a mixture of crops are helping biological control, are helping production, are helping the nitrogen content of the soil. So I think it's really a great opportunity to use different types of crops or flowers and crops. The big problems is distance. They fly up at hundreds of meters. So I don't see it applied in soya in Brazil yet, or sugarcane.
Well, that's great. Well, regarding this using of flowers, in our case, with the plant pathogens, I remember that this one paper where people used some kind of flowers. They put those flowers in the middle of the tomato plants, and the flowers would release methyl jasmonate, and that would induce resistance in the plants, and the plants would, the bacterial disease, the symptoms would decrease, because of these flowers that were together with these tomato plants. And well, I would leave the microphone open for you speakers to say something, and then we'll finish this webinar. Italo.
Yeah. My closing words will be that Professor Valentine was mentioned that we need true collaboration now to advance in some important areas of the research. And this is the idea of the A5 Alliance. The webinar, it's one of the activities of the A5 Alliance. What we are trying to do is to put the scientists together and see if you can have more collaboration. So that's what we are trying to do. We have doing a lot of initiatives here in Brazil to improve the use of biocontrol. And we can learn a lot from the other countries where we're doing this. For example, we have projects with Denmark, Norway. We have different projects in using different expertise to solve some specific problems. And And I hope we can continue our talk and collaboration and discussion in the near future. Thank you.
And
Yeah, and I want to second this. I really think that international collaboration is an excellent way forward. And this is, I really enjoyed having the interchange in this meeting. And I hope that we can continue with along these lines, because I think there are few opportunities for situations like this. And we are going to have International Congress of Entomology. It was supposed to be this last summer, maybe next summer, but still, that's only one part of that is about biological control, not the whole thing. We have no international biological control meetings. We have invertebrate pathology, and then there's, entomology, and then there's plant pathology, but there's no international meetings that really bring everyone together, and we have some of the same issues. And I think that it's really valuable to hear from other people. Yeah.
please, Vanley.
Next year in Davos, we have the second meeting of IOBC, and there are microbiologists, weed biocontrol people. We want to have them together in order to fertilize each other with new ideas.
Yeah.
So there is one, but maybe it will have to be delayed. But I would like, Sergio, I would like to make one comment to students. Students very often, when they finish the university, they go to chemical companies. I would like to tell them, please try biocontrol first, because it's biology, it's life, it's evolution, it's ecology. You help increasing biodiversity. So don't go for the big money, stay with the small money, but you have an interesting life.
Okay. Monique, do you want to talk something?
Well, I was actually also thinking about the IOBC meeting, so I was among the same lines. I like this interchange, and I hope we meet each other soon on another occasion or a similar occasion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Wang Peng.
Yeah. Also, I appreciate this the changes. I hope expanded cooperation with our colleagues. Such as the enemies or organism. Also, I look forward to take part in the international meeting about the biological control. In the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, before finishing, I think that this is a very interesting time, because you see, we have people in the United States, Netherlands, Brazil, China, talk together about the subject. So this new normal way of life is very interesting, because I think that if you bring people together virtually, and then probably a lot of new things will come out. So on behalf of the A5 Alliance, we thank you for joining us in this webinar on biological inputs in agriculture. So I would like to thank all the speakers and all the people that have been watching this webinar, and all of the speakers will be available. Well, you can contact them through email to answer any other questions. Thank you very much for everybody. Have a nice weekend. Today is Thursday. See you.